This is One on One.
We are, in fact, speaking with Dr. Denise Fyffe, who is part of the forum tonight at Kessler Foundation, talking about veterans, their issues, particularly those with spinal cord injuries. For those who may not be familiar with the research, could you talk about it?
Sure. So, Steve, my study is really working with spinal cord injured veterans at Kessler and the East Orange VA, that is the VA of New Jersey healthcare system.
Both organizations?
Yes. So what we've noticed is that there are some veterans who are at Kessler who don't even know about access to care at the VA. These are veterans who are probably injured many years after they served in the military and haven't had much, they have private insurance, but haven't really used the VA for their health care services. And so what we found is that after a spinal cord injury, we know it's a very costly injury to live with many...
Because
of the medical complications that are associated with the injury, including pressure ulcers, including the need for a wheelchair, that in terms of spasticity, medications, pain management, those kinds of things all complicate a person living with the injury, as well as wanting to get back into your home after such a traumatic injury. So there's, being in the hospital. So picture it, Steve. A veteran is at Kessler, they've been injured in a motor vehicle accident, and now
they're rehabbing.
They're getting their rehab at Kessler, and they're due to go back home. But going back home requires a lot of adjustment. Your home needs to be modified. What if your wheelchair can't fit through the door? Well, interestingly enough, through our work with the East Orange VA, what we've learned is that there are opportunities for access to resources that will adjust their home, provide them with the wheelchair, give them opportunities in terms of aid and attendant to help them in their homes. So that's not just helping them, that's helping them and their families. And so our study is actually working with the spinal cord injured veterans as well as their caregivers in their homes to learn more about access to these supportive kind of resources. And really, it's filling a really important gap in terms of their care.
I'm curious about the impact of service-connected disability compensation. This issue keeps coming up a lot, and I don't know what that means, and I'm not sure folks at home know what it means.
Yeah, sure. So after when spinal cord injured veteran is injured, the time of injury is really key. So if a veteran is injured during their military service, they may be eligible for service-connected disability compensation from the VA. So actually, let me take a step back. Being service-connected is a designation made by the VA based on your medical picture.
You mean it happened while in service?
While the injury was sustained during military service, that's correct. And that designation is usually derived by an array of medical examinations and assessments that are done both in the VA and outside the VA.
What's the compensation issue?
Well, if a veteran is deemed service-connected, they may be eligible for VA disability compensation, which is a monthly compensation that is provided by the VA to a service-connected veteran and or eligible family member, so it could potentially also service the family as well. Again, if their injury is sustained in the line of duty and or if they had an injury or disease that was aggravated during military service.
Because I have worked with you before and I've gotten to know you a little bit, my sense is that beyond your clinical expertise and your advanced education and dealing with veterans in so many ways, on the human side, I'm curious about this. You've dealt with so many veterans who are dealing with real challenges, veterans who want to not just have a quality of life like the rest of us, but work. What is your sense of how hard the veterans you work with work?
Well, that's an excellent question as well. We know that after a spinal cord injury, the employment rate of our veterans does reduce dramatically, and that it's tricky to work through. But one of our projects, another project that I'm working with, John O'Neill on, is looking at
the foundation.
At the foundation, yes. It's and we're working with our collaborators at the Tampa VA on this project. We're looking at veterans who are striving to work. So those who are actually looking for work and trying to facilitate access to vocational experiences for them. So that's another project that we're really trying to tap. We're really trying to tap into employment challenges, address some of the barriers, and work with some of the.
What are some of those barriers?
Well, some of those barriers include employers' bias about people people with disabilities.
The stigma?
The stigma that's definitely has been observed by our participants. In addition to living with a spinal cord injury, we know that there, again, going back to the medical complications. So there can be, unfortunately, absenteeism that's experienced in a job because of medical complications that may be unexpected and on the job. And then what do? You have to go home and take care of them or something like that.
A lot of chronic pain as well.
A lot of chronic pain. Yep. We know that there are bowel and bladder accidents that sometimes happen on the job. And that's when you do have to go home, right, to take care of that before you come back. So we know that there are a number of issues related to that. Whether or not, our veterans have someone to help get them up in the morning and get them out the door to work.
They don't all have that.
They don't all have access to that. And so all of those things, again, getting access to those kinds of resources can be very beneficial to our veterans getting back to work after an SCI. And I have to tell you, they have the energy and the motivation to get back to work, in spite of the challenges that they're facing.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the New Jersey Education Association, Investors Bank, Hackensack Meridian Health, PSE&G, Rowan University, the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor, and by the Fidelco Group. Promotional support provided by bestofnj.com, covering all NJ has to offer, and by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with TriStar Studios.